Hello everyone, welcome back. So in previous lecture, we just created a user registration and we have verified user is existed in database or not, right? By using Ajax call. So now we have to log in with the credentials, right? So let me show you. So we just created a user registration form. So once user is registered, so we have to log in with the credentials, right? So before logging before user is logged into our application, so we will create a user roles. Okay, so for example, so if you take any real-time example or any real-time application, so each and every registered user will have its own role, right? Like administrator or normal user or guest user or viewer or editor or subscriber. So those kind of roles will have by user, right? So because of that, let's create user roles. Okay, so we have created user entity to register the user. Now we will create user roles as well. So whenever user is logged in, then that particular user will have specific user role name. Okay, so let me create a user role entity. Okay, role entity. Go to Eclipse and go to src main Java. Go to entity and create role entity. Create class role entity. Okay, finish button. So now we have to declare this class as a entity annotation, and let me declare the table name as well. So table name I will give it as role table. So attribute name will be name is equal to role. Let me stop the server. So now role table will have role id and role name, right? So private long role id and private string role name. Let's have setters and getters methods. That's it. Let me override a toString method as well. That's it. So now role table is ready. So let me declare the primary key. So role id will be a primary key in role table, right? So who will generate this primary key? Let's Hibernate generate the primary key. So for that we need to use generated value, and strategy will be identity strategy. That's it. So now role id and role name we have created. So now we have to establish the connection between relationship between user and role entity. So let me open and show you. So we have a user entity, right? And we have created role entity as well. So the relationship between user entity and role entity will be many to many relationship. Why? Because so multiple users can have multiple roles and multiple roles can have multiple users. Okay, so we will create a many to many relationship between user and role entities, user entity and role entity. So let me create a relationship between user entity and role entity, many to many relationship. So how we can create many to many relationship? So in many to many relationship we'll have three tables, right? So user table, role table, and user underscore role table. So if anyone watching newly, so you can watch my previous videos, many to many relationship. So you can easily understand many to many relationship. Okay. So let me create the relationship between user entity and role entity. So I want to I want to create a relation or ownership of relationship by user entity. Okay, so let's user entity owning the relationship. So any association mapping or relation or relationship between user entity and role entity, so we have to create any one of the entity as a owning the relationship. So in user and role entity, so I want to create a user entity as a owning the relationship. So since user entity owning the relationship, so user entity will have, let me create a property of role. So we already created, right? So private list of role entity. Okay, so now roles, that's it. So organize the imports, it will dot list. So role entity is created. So now let's establish the connection of many to many relationship. So many to many relationship. So in many to many relationship, so let's add cascade type all. Okay, so why cascade type is equal to all? So what are all the operations we are going to perform with user entity? So same operations will be applicable for role entity also. So let me explain you in very easy manner. So this cascade type all persist match. For example, if you are going to store user details, so along with the user details, roles also will be stored in database. If you are removing removing or merging, if you are updating the user entity, then update same update operation will be will happen in role entity as well. That is the meaning of cascade is equal to all, right? So now let's create a fetch type. Fetch type should be uh, eager loading. Why? Because so whenever you are trying to retrieve role role entity, so along with the role entity, so sorry, not here, so by mistake I have written here, so it should be inside the user entity. So user entity, so whenever you are trying to fetch the user details, along with the user details we should fetch user roles as well. So for that purpose, fetch type I will give eager operation, eager fetch. Why? Because in many to many relationship by default it will be it will perform lazy operation, right? So I have explicitly written eager fetch. Why? Because so whenever we are fetching user details, along with user details we should get user specific roles as well. So that is the reason fetch type eager. So now, so in many to many relationship we should have join table also, right? So let me create a join table. So before creating join table, let me create a bidirectional mapping in role entity. So here also multiple roles can associated with multiple users, right? Private list of user entity, list of users. So organize the import, it will dot list. So here we have to give many to many relationship. So since role entity is a non-owning relationship, right? So why? Because so user entity we have declared it as a owning the relationship side, right? So which are all the entity owning the relationship, it will have cascade all. So which are all entity is not non owning the relationship, so that entity will have mapped by. So let me use mapped by attribute, and here you should give roles property. So this property is from user entity. So this is the property name, we have to give it in role entity. So this, what is the meaning of this bidirectional mapping? So whenever roles we are getting, so along with the roles we can fetch users as well. So now let's create a join table in user entity. So join table name should be, I will give name it as users underscore roles. Okay, so let me click enter so that you can easily understand. So it will have three attributes, right? What is another attribute? So in many to many relationship we will have join table, and join table will have primary key of user entity and primary key of role entity, right? So users underscore role table will have primary key of user entity and a primary key of roles entity. Let me move roles entity here. So here, so let me add a join column name, join columns. So at the rate join column annotation, so inside that we'll specify the name. So this name should be primary key column, primary key column of user entities. I will give it as a custom username user underscore id, and this should be referenced column name with id of user entity primary key. So here I have given user id, right? So this is the one you have to give user id. So join column, so join table will have primary key of user entity and primary key of role entity. So in user entity primary key will be user id. So I am giving join table column name as user id, and reference column name will be user underscore id as a join column, and user id is a primary key of user entity. So similarly we have to declare inverse join column, right? So let me put comma here, inverse join column at the rate join column, and this column name, so user underscore role join table will have user underscore id and role underscore id, two columns, right? So now let me write role underscore id, and reference column name will be, sorry, name attribute you have to specify, and reference column name will be the primary key of role entity. So role entity primary key will be id. So let me give id it here. So join table name will be users underscore roles, and this table will have user id underscore id column and role underscore id column. So user underscore id is from primary key of user entity, and role underscore id column will be primary key of role entity. Okay, so now we have established the connection between user entity and role entity, many to many relationship. That's it. So now let me uh, and roles. So let's create a array list here. Why? Because I want to add a list of roles, right? So that's the reason. Let's create a new array list. Yeah, new array list. Okay, so multiple roles we are going to add in database. So similarly for users also, for role entity also, we'll give list of users, new array list. Yeah, that's it. So let me create setters and getter methods of both the properties. Source, generate getters and setters. So if you use Lombok framework, you no need to create getters and setters methods. Since we are not using Lombok, so let's create setters and getter methods of roles and users properties. That's it. So now what I will do, let's Hibernate create this join table column. So I don't want to create table name, so let's Hibernate create a join join table in database. Currently if you open in our SQL IO client, so here we have only user table, right? So now we don't have role table and users underscore role table. So let's JPA create tables automatically. So how it will create, so we have to specify in application dot properties, right? So we have application dot properties, control shift R, application dot properties file, and go to here. So now I will give, instead of update, I will give create. So what it will do, so the moment I restart the server, so it will delete existing table and it will create new tables. Okay, so let me start the server before showing that. So currently we have only user table, right? So once we start the server, so we'll have user table and roles table and users underscore roles table. So let me start the server. So detail auto error executing delete alter table user underscore roles drop foreign key. So because existing table is having data, it should drop actually. So what I will do, I will delete this table. Let me refresh that table. So I think already created a role and user underscore role, because uh, I have started the server, right? It's created, and what is the error? Let me check. Let me stop the server and start the server again. So this time application.properties, I will change it as a update only. Why? Because otherwise again it will delete and it will create every time. So let me start the server. As server started successfully, go to your database. Let me refresh the object browser and we can see there is a three tables are created. So role table, so ID underscore role ID under and name, and user table will have user details, and role users underscore role will have role ID underscore user ID. So it is created successfully. So now what we can do, so now we have created a many to many relationship between user entity and role entity, right? So now while creating user, we should add default user role for new user, right? So let me assign default user role for new user. So how for that, so first before that let me create a user role JPA repository. Sorry, role JPA repository. If you want to fetch the user roles, right? So we should have to create role JPA repository as well. We already created a user JPA repository, right? So similarly, since we have a new table called role table, so to access role details, we should create role JPA repository as well. So let me create role JPA repository interface role JPA repository, and it will extend JPA repository. Click on finish button. So JPA repository is a generic type. Let me stop the server. Later I will restart again. So now here it should be role entity, right? Since it is a role JPA repository, we need to pass role entity, and here we have to give primary key of role entity. So now, so we need to fetch user roles by name. So for that purpose, let's create a method to find user roles. Okay, find by name, because in user role entity we have a name, right? So based on the user role name, we can find the specific role details. So now by using name, okay. So now find by name, and here we can use pass string role name. So this method will return role entity. That's it. So now we will fetch the roles and we will assign to newly registered user. So let me write the business logic. Where we have to write the business logic, we should write business logic in service layer. So let me open user service IMPL, and here while saving the user, so we must assign a role to you specific registered user, right? So before that, let me fetch the role name. So let me create a JPA repository. So here role JPA repository I created, right? Let me declare it as a repository. That's it. So now user service IMPL, let me create a JPA, sorry, role JPA repository object. So let me declare at the rate auto-while. So now generally we should not hard code directly roles. So let me create the roles, few roles by default. So let me create the roles. Some roles I will insert. Let me, where is the data? So I will give one, and I will give first role will be one will be admin, and two will be user underscore role underscore admin I will give, so that you can easily understand. Role underscore admin and user underscore role or guest underscore role, anything you can give. Role underscore guest underscore role. Okay, let's give guest underscore role, and this one admin underscore role. So whenever the new user is going to save this data, so refresh. So we have admin underscore role and guest underscore role. For the time being, two roles we have. So whenever the moment we registered a new user, so by default we'll add it as a guest user role. Okay. So let me add guest user role. Let me assign guest user role to registered user. So for that JPA repository role jpa repository dot find by name, right? We have created find by name method in role jpa repository. So here I want to assign new user guest underscore role. So GUES, guest, generally spelling will be GUEST, right? Guest underscore role. Yeah. So now this is the role we are going to assign for new users. That's it. So this will return user as a role entity. So now, so user entity will have roles, right? So before saving it, user entity will have roles, right? User entity dot set roles. So it will accept a list of roles, right? So list of roles. So let me add arrays dot as list. Arrays dot as list. So here we can pass this role, user entity role. That's it. So the moment we created the user, so user will save it as a guest role. So why we are creating roles? Because so the moment any particular user is trying to log in any one of the application, once he accessed the home page, so let's say home page will have 2 to 5 links. Okay, 5 links. Home page will have 5 links. So all the 5 links, some roles can access one link, user role can access one link, and admin can access all the links. So such kind of authorization we are going to specify with the help of roles concept. Okay, so that we will achieve through Spring Security. So once I created a login screen, then we'll implement Spring Security as well. Okay, so now let me create one new user now. So before inserting data, open the database. So as of now we don't have any users, right? So because we have created new tables again. So let me, now application dot properties we have given update only, right? So what is the meaning of ddl auto update? So it will not create new tables, it will just update the table if any changes are available in entity, right? So now, and also whatever data inserted, that data will not be lost if we specify ddl auto. If you specify create, then whatever you have inserted, every time it will remove, and whenever we are starting the server, so all the data will be lost, right, if you give a ddl auto as a create. So that's the reason I have given update. So now, and also roles, we have 2 roles. So users underscore roles, nothing is there, right? So we don't have, we haven't created new user. So let me create new user. So let me start the server now. Server started successfully, and I just loaded the page. Let me create uh, Rasul Sheikh and email ID a2ee.rasul@gmail.com and password tested123. Later we will encrypt the password, guys. Okay, while using Spring Security we will encrypt the password. For the time being we are inserting same raw password. Okay, so now click on submit button. So you can see user registered successfully. So now if you open the database, you can see user is created. You can see user is created. Refresh. So java gmail.com is created. And what is the role assigned to that Rasul user? So let me see. Username guest role. Why? Because role id will be, we have assigned it as a guest role, right? So Rasul is having guest role access. So let me create another user to uh, insert multiple users. Okay, so let me create Virat Kohli Virat at gmail.com, Virat at 123 password, submit. So user registered successfully. So now go to the database table, users table. So Virat Kohli is created and user underscore role table, another record is inserted, his role also guest role. So in this lecture we have created user roles, and we have created a relationship between user and roles as a many to many relationship. And next lecture we'll create a login screen. Okay, thank you guys who are all watching newly. Subscribe Java Cafeteria channel. You just need to go and search in YouTube Java Cafeteria and you can search it, or you can type here www.youtube.com/@ Rasul hyphen Sheikh slash playlist. So you can access Java Cafeteria channel and you can subscribe and watch all the videos. So who are all wanted to watch all this channel will be limited access for the public users. So who are all wanted full access, you can ping me in my WhatsApp number 9035160783. So who are all interested, you can ping me, so I will give you full channel access. Thank you guys.